We have not even talked about the Stephen Strasburg situation, but we can do that with our first guest of the day. Tom Verducci will be part of the Fox Sports 1's telecast of Game 5 between Indians and Yankees tonight at 8 p.m. Plus, you can watch him on MLB Network's MLB Tonight, which airs live before and after every postseason game. Tom, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Michael. Can't wait for the game tonight.
It's like the baby brother of Game 7, so I can't wait either. It's always great to have a winner-go-home sort of thing. Let's start, before we even talk about this game, John Farrell.
Yep.
So what do you have to do to keep a job in baseball these days? So obviously it has to be something in that clubhouse where the team didn't like him. And then that cryptic comment by Dombrowski, it was something that no matter how many games he won, he still would have been fired. What does that mean?
Yeah, very cryptic. You're right. I think that was telling without really telling us exactly what it was. The guy basically couldn't save his job, being the first Red Sox manager ever to win back-to-back division titles. I think there was a problem in the clubhouse there. I don't think that was everything. Clearly, there's something there that we don't know about. But to me, Michael, I think this is more about the fallout from David Ortiz not being there. You know, first of all, lack of power in the lineup. You have to hit the ball out of the park these days to win in baseball. They didn't do that last in the league in home runs. Then you get in the clubhouse. He's the one who held that clubhouse together all the time. And then you think about the Red Sox just as a viable commercial enterprise. Their ratings tanked this year on television. They had one of the biggest local television ratings drops. And that was a team that people just didn't get into, partly because David Ortiz wasn't there. Very popular player, great player, home run hitter, the kind of player people want to see. So John Farrell, I thought, paid the price for life without David Ortiz. Now, it appears to be more to it, but I think that had a lot to do with it.
You know, Tom, in life and in business, sometimes it's very difficult to respect your boss when you feel like he's a puppet for somebody above him. Is that the way it's going to be in Major League Baseball with these managers, sabermetrics, organizational decisions? Is it difficult for players sometimes to respect the manager?
Yeah, I think it is sometimes if you don't know if the final decision that was made came from the man who's looking you in the eye, the manager. A lot of times it does come up from upstairs. And I was talking to a manager recently about that it's difficult to manage in the big leagues these days for that very reason. A lot of times managers are making moves because it's what the front office wants them to do, rather than a manager with his experience in the game trusting his eyes on what he's seeing. So I think the game has changed in that regard. I think the general managers have become the superstars of the game more so than the managers themselves. And I think, this is an old story, too, with Dombrowski, where he did not hire John Farrell. He had nothing invested in John Farrell being there. And this is going to be his hire. He's going to hire somebody that he's familiar with.
All right, so we know about Farrell, and we know that Yankee fans booed the heck out of Joe Girardi before Game 3. Could this possibly be Joe Girardi's last game as Yankee manager if the Yankees lose tonight?
It could be. I don't get the sense that, his job is on the line, win or lose tonight. I mean, maybe a lot of this has to do with Joe himself, whether he wants to come back. I've always said managing, there's a period there, almost like a marriage, that, you get to that 8, 9, 10-year period, you start wearing out your welcome. Even if you're a great manager, you saw that with Torre, you saw that with Dusty Baker in San Francisco, you saw that with Francona in Boston. Girardi's at that point now, and I think that's the natural cycle of things. I'm not saying he's not going to be back, but I will tell you this, Michael. I've been impressed with how this Yankees team has rallied behind Joe Girardi. I'm not saying that's why they won the 2 games at the stadium, but they clearly had his back after that disaster of Game 2, and they saw their manager the next day rake through the coals publicly. And you saw and heard some of the things the players said about their manager. They're playing with a purpose, A, because they want to win, don't get me wrong, just to move on to the advance, but I think also they want to have their managers back.
And we defend Joe Girardi. You're around Major League Baseball. How is he viewed as a manager around the game?
Well, I think like a lot of managers, he's the right manager for this front office. He doesn't really manage off the script. You're not going to see him make moves and explain them by saying, hey, that was my gut feeling, or I had a good feel about that matchup. He's generally going to stick with percentages 100% of the time. So that makes him the right manager for this team. That maybe there are some moves that he would rather make. But sticking to a script, having a plan going into a game and executing that, I think he's been very good at that, especially when it comes to bullpen usage. I'm
glad you mentioned that, Tom, because I said yesterday I went off this whole harangue about, Yankee fans don't like this guy, but, Billy Martin and Lou Piniella are not marching through the door. If he's not here, it's going to be another guy who adheres to the script. Brian's not bringing in a wild and wacky manager. You might see Pete McCann in here. That's the type of manager you're going to get if Joe Girardi's not here.
Well, look around baseball, Michael. You show me the manager with, Billy Martin, Lou Piniella, Earl Weaver, Whitey Herzog, managers who put their personality and imprint on the way they run a game and a team. It doesn't happen anymore. Those guys aren't managing today. They're not out there. They're certainly not being hired in the latest opening. So you're right. You have to, when you look at a manager now, I think you have to look at through the prism of the front office, not how is this guy going to run a game. Because essentially everybody's running a game almost the same way. It's like in football, if everybody ran a 3-4 defense. Every manager in baseball is pretty much running the same game.
Do you agree with Sabathia over Gray tonight?
I do. Part of this is because of the enormous trust the entire staff has in CC. Part of it was the way that Sonny Gray threw the ball the last time out. Sonny Gray is sort of a victim of being so smart and having so many pitches that he overthinks situations. And I think in this situation, having a guy who they know is going to treat it as another start and stick to what he does best, there's a trust factor there. Now it becomes much more of a bullpen game. As you know, CC's pretty much done at 75 pitches. They took him out at 77 last time while he was throwing the ball well. So you're looking at a 4 or 5 inning start probably for CC. I think they're good with that. But I'm not surprised. It is interesting to me, though, that the Yankees traded 3 top prospects to get a 27-year-old power arm to pitch this kind of game. And instead they're choosing a guy who's 10 years older who throws the ball 91 miles an hour.
The recent history in elimination games for the Indians, and, of course, their history overall has not been good. Is there any value in that in this game? Does it matter? Are the players even thinking about it?
I don't know if the players are thinking about it, but I will tell you this. There is so much more pressure on Cleveland tonight than New York. It's not even close. This team now has put everything on Game 5. This is the way they set up their rotation. They kind of toyed with the rotation and tweaked it just to have Kluber on his normal day in Game 5. Well, now you're here. It's at home. Now you're putting that decision on the line. You're putting 102 wins on the line. You're putting all the magic of the 22-game winning streak on the line. You're putting last year's World Series on the line. Everything here is in this game in a moment where, if not history, at least the last 2 games, they can see it slipping through their fingers. So the early part of this game is enormous for Cleveland. Kluber has to go out there, and I think he will be sharp, but he has to go out there and make this team feel good about themselves. And they'll feel great if he goes out there and has Kluber-type stuff. But I'm telling you, before this first pitch is thrown tonight, the pressure is so much more on Cleveland than it is on New York.
One final thing. What's happening with the Nationals? Really, what's happening? Strasburg's not starting because he's too sick. They're going to stay with Roark, and now he is starting today. He was on IV. It seems like Dusty didn't even know what was going on, thought he threw a side day when he didn't. It was the day before. Is that as dysfunctional as it seems?
Yes, and I think that's not unusual for that organization and some of their players. Strasburg does require a lot of maintenance, supremely talented. But is a creature of habit, and the fact that Dusty either misspoke or didn't know when he threw a bullpen session, the fact that he's talking about him being under the weather when everybody saw him out there on the field earlier the same day, raised a lot of questions, and now here he is taking the ball. So bottom line is he should be taking the ball. There's no doubt in my mind it's the right move to give him the ball rather than Tanner Roark. How they got here, though, is that's kind of typical Washington. There's always too much drama around this team. Can they rise above it on the road in the game they have to win? I don't know. They should win now with Strasburg on normal rest, the way he's thrown the second half of the season. But they are the kings of drama, and they'll have a lot more going into this game.
Tom, I'll tell you what. It really reflects poorly on Strasburg. David Ross and Mark Teixeira just ripped them on SportsCenter yesterday. You're paying this guy $175 million to pitch this game, and because he's not feeling well, he doesn't want to go? And now it seems like he's almost been embarrassed to start this game.
Well, yeah, and go back to the decision to take Max Scherzer out of the game. Did he fight to stay in the game? Did Matt Wieters say that he was starting to lose it? They were better off with a lefty on Rizzo than Max Scherzer? A lot of questions here about the willingness to take a ball in a big spot. And certainly, listen, I wasn't there. I have no idea what the level of sickness he had yesterday, talking about Strasburg. But you would think that to be ruled out, like completely ruled out the day before a game, that he must have been really sick. And I didn't think there was any indication it was that bad because, as I said, he was on the field. I mean, I don't know why they just didn't say, hey, we don't know who's going to pitch tomorrow. We're going to see if he feels better. But by ruling him out, I think that's what threw at everybody. Is he really that sick, or it's not even a possibility that he can make this start? Very, very strange.
Tom, I'll see you on the field after the game. It should be fun.
Look forward to it, Michael. Thanks.